Hey Chip, today is the 12th of June 2020 and it's 5:48 in the evening. So June's supposed to be summer, but at the moment it's pretty horrible outside, grey and wet. Although you can see the tomato plants in the windows, which are taking up quite a lot of space. Um, so yeah, just doing a recording of the Twits today. But before I start that, I just want to say I'm thinking of you. I'm wondering. I know what you're doing now. You're nenne. But generally, I wonder about what you do every day. We had a lovely phone call on Tuesday, and we did study practice English, and the car helped, and you did really well, and I was very proud of you for that. And afterwards, we watched the video, which is on here, the rare fishes one, and you watched as we caught the great white shark and suckerfish and a sawtooth shark or saw shark. And you really enjoyed it. And then we played a bit and went and saw them in the aquarium, and you loved that too. And it was really nice to see your face getting so excited. I enjoyed that. And yeah, so that was just something I wanted to share with you. At the moment, I'm still not really going to work, although I'm working at home because of the virus is still going on. Hopefully, in a few weeks, we can go back to work in the uni. But at the moment, I'm just writing proposals for new grants. So hopefully, I can get a new science grant and get more money, and then I can send money for you and come to see you. It's a little bit sad, really, because, like as you also have seen in the old videos, I was supposed to come to see you in May, but the COVID stopped that from happening, and I don't know when I'm going to see you again. Because at the moment, not really anybody is allowed to travel unless it's really special circumstances. And so that's really sad because I really want to see you, but I can't. But I do really enjoy the times that we have together, and I just want to say if you need to speak to me more, you can always phone me, and I will always do whatever I can to spend time with you. Okay. All right, well, let's get on with this book. Enough of that. Just want to say gambaro, and yeah, let's do this. Here we go. So, we join back in the Twits on the chapter The Great Upside Down Monkey Circus. I think these monkeys were the ones stuck in the tray. Now for the monkeys. The 4 monkeys in the cage in the garden were all one family. They were Mugglewump and his wife and their 2 small children. But what on earth were Mr. and Mrs. Twit doing with monkeys in their garden? Well, in the old days, they had both worked in the circus as monkey trainers. They used to teach monkeys to do tricks and dress up in human clothes and to smoke pipes and all of the rest of that nonsense. Today, although they were retired, Mr. Twit still wanted to train monkeys. It was his dream that one day he would own the first great upside-down monkey circus in the world. That meant that the monkeys had to do everything upside down. They had to dance upside down, on their hands, with their feet in the air. They had to play football upside down. They had to balance one on top of the other upside down, with Mugglewump at the bottom and the smallest baby at the very top. They even had to eat and drink upside down, and that is not an easy thing to do because the food and water has to go up through your throat instead of down it. In fact, it is almost impossible, but the monkeys simply had to do it, otherwise they got nothing. All this sounds pretty silly to you and me. It sounded pretty silly to the monkeys too. They absolutely hated having to do this upside down nonsense day after day. It made them giddy standing on their heads for hours on end. Sometimes the 2 small monkey children would faint with so much blood going to their heads. But Mr. Twit didn't care about that. He kept them practicing for 6 hours every day, and if they didn't do as they were told, Mrs. Twit would soon come running with her beastly stick. The roly-poly bird to the rescue. Help, help! Hello, I'm the roly-poly bird. Ooh, can you help us? Mugglewump and his family longed to escape from the cage in Mr. Twit's garden and go back to the African jungle where they came from. They hated Mr. and Mrs. Twit for making their lives so miserable. They also hated them for what they did to the birds every Tuesday and Wednesday. "Fly away, birds," they used to shout, jumping about in the cage and waving their arms. "Don't sit on that big dead tree. It's just been smeared all over with sticky glue. Go and sit somewhere else." That's good, isn't it, Hugo? The monkeys are helping to stop the birds from getting caught. But these were English birds, and they didn't understand the weird African languages the monkey spoke. So they took no notice and went on using the big dead tree and getting caught for Mrs. Twits' bird pie. Then one day a truly magnificent bird flew down out of the sky and landed on the monkey cage. "Good heavens!" cried all the monkeys together. "It's the roly-poly bird. What on earth are you doing over here in England, roly-poly bird?" Like the monkeys, the roly-poly bird came from Africa, and he spoke the same language as they did. "I've come over for a holiday," said the roly-poly bird. "I like to travel." He fluffed his marvellous coloured feathers and looked down rather grandly at the monkeys. "For most people," he went on, "flying away on holiday is very expensive, but I can fly anywhere in the world for nothing." "Do you know how to talk to these English birds?" Mugglewump asked. "Of course I do," said the roly-poly bird. "It's no good going to a country and not knowing the language." "Then we must hurry," said Mugglewump. "Today is Tuesday, and over there you already see the revolting Mr. Twit up on the ladder, painting sticky glue on all the branches of the big dead tree. This evening, when the birds come in to roost, you must warn them not to perch on that tree, or they will be made into bird pie." That evening, the roly-poly bird flew around and round the big dead tree, singing out, "There's sticky stuff all over the tree. If you land in the branches, you'll never get free. So fly away, stay up high, or you'll finish up tomorrow in a hot bird pie." Really? I wonder if the birds listened, Hugo. There's loads of them on the cages now, and look, all the monkeys all happy as well. No bird pie for Mr. Twit. The next morning, when Mr. Twit came out with his huge basket to snatch all the birds from the big dead tree, there wasn't a single one on it. They were all sitting on top of the monkey cage. The roly-poly bird was there as well, and Mugglewump and his family were inside, and the cage inside the cage, and the whole lot of them were laughing at Mr. Twit. Ha ha! And look, still no bird pie for Mr. Twit. Mr. Twit wasn't going to wait another week for his big bird pie supper. He loved bird pie. It was his favourite meal. So that very same day he went after the birds again. This time he smeared all the top bars of the monkey cage with sticky glue, as well as the branches of the big dead tree. "Now I'll get you," he said, "whichever one you sit on." One second, Chip, I'm just going to get one quick swig of my tea, because otherwise it's going to get cold. One sec. The monkeys crouched inside the cage watching all this, and later on, when the roly-poly bird came swooping in for an evening chat, they shouted out, "Don't land on our cage, roly-poly bird. It's covered in sticky glue. So is the tree." And that evening, as the sun went down and all the birds came in again to roost, the roly-poly bird flew around and around the monkey cage and the big dead tree, singing out his warning. "There's sticky stuff now on the cage and the tree. If you land on either, you'll never get free. So fly away, stay up high, or you'll finish up tomorrow in a hot bird pie." Really? Somebody's getting angry. Mr. and Mrs. Twit go off to buy guns. "Oh, get you birds." The next morning, when Mr. Twit came out with his huge basket cage, The next morning, when Mr. Twit came out with his huge basket, not a single bird was sitting on either the monkey cage or the big dead tree. They were all perched happily on the roof of Mr. Twit's house. The roly-poly bird was up there as well, and the monkeys were in the cage, and the whole lot of them were hooting with laughter at Mr. Twit. "Oh, wipe that silly laugh off your beaks," Mr. Twit screamed at the birds. "I'll get you next time, you filthy feathery frumps. I'll wring your necks, the whole lot of you, and have you bubbling in the pot for bird pie before this day is out." "Yes, I will." Look at them all up on the roof laughing away. Ha ha. You can't get us. No, 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 no. So, how are you going to do that? Asked Mrs. Twit, who had come outside to see what all the noise was about. "I won't have you smearing sticky glue all over the roof of our house." Mr. Twit got very excited. "I've got an idea," he cried. He didn't bother to keep his voice down because he didn't think the monkeys could understand. "We'll both go into town right away and we'll buy a gun each," he shouted. "How's that?" "Brilliant," cried Mrs. Twit, grinning and showing her long yellow teeth. "We'll buy those big shotguns that spray out 50 bullets or more with each bang." "Exactly," said Mr. Twit. "Lock up the house while I go and make sure the monkeys are safely shut away." Mr. Twit went over to the monkey cage. "Attention!" he barked in a fearsome monkey trainer's voice. "Upside down, all of you, and jump on it. One on top of the other. Quick, get on with it, or you'll feel Mrs. Twit's stick across your backsides." Obediently, the poor monkeys stood on their hands and clambered one on top of the other, with Mugglewump at the bottom and the smallest child at the very top. "Now stay there till we come back," Mr. Twit ordered. "Don't you dare move, and don't overbalance. When we return in 2 or 3 hours' time, I shall..." They're upside down. "Expect to find you all in exactly the same position as you are now. You understand?" With that, Mr. Twit marched away. Mrs. Twit went with him, and the monkeys were left alone with the birds. Mugglewump has an idea. As soon as Mr. and Mrs. Twit had disappeared down the road, the monkeys all flipped back to their feet the right way up. "Quick, get the key!" Mugglewump called out to the roly-poly bird, who was still sitting on the roof of the house. "What key?" shouted the roly-poly bird. "The key to the door to our cage," cried Mugglewump. "It's hanging on a nail in the workshed. That's where he always puts it." The roly-poly bird flew down and came back with the key in his beak. Mugglewump reached a hand through the bars of the cage and took the key. He put it in the lock and turned it. The door opened. All 4 monkeys leapt out together. "We are free!" cried the two little ones. "Where shall we go, Dad? Where shall we hide?" "Don't get excited," said Mugglewump. "Calm down, everybody. Before we escape from this beastly place, we have one very important thing to do." "What?" they asked. "We're going to turn those terrible Twits upside down." "We're going to do what?" they cried. "You must be joking, Dad." "I'm not joking," Mugglewump said. "We're going to turn both Mr. and Mrs. Twit upside down with their legs in the air." "Don't be ridiculous," the roly-poly bird said. "How can we possibly turn those 2 maggoty old monsters upside down?" We can," cried Mugglewump. We are going to make them stand on their heads for hours and hours, perhaps forever. Let them see what it feels like for a change." "How?" said the roly-poly bird. "Just tell me how." Mugglewump laid his head on one side and tiny twinkling little on one side, and a tiny twinkling little smile touched the corners of his mouth. "Now and again," he said, "but not very often, I have a brilliant idea. This is one of them. Follow me, my friends, follow me." He scampered. Oh, look, they look like they've got a real good plan to get the Twits. He scampered off towards the house, and the 3 other monkeys and roly-poly bird went after him. "Buckets and paintbrushes," cried Mugglewump. "That's what we want next. There are plenty in the workshed. Hurry up, everyone. Get a bucket and a paintbrush." Inside Mr. Twit's workshed there was an enormous barrel of hug-tight sticky glue, the stuff he used for catching birds. "Fill your buckets," Mugglewump ordered. "We are now going to the big house." Mrs. Twit had hidden the key to the front door under the mat, and Mugglewump had seen her doing it, so it was easy for them to get in. In they went, all 4 monkeys with their buckets of sticky glue. Then came the roly-poly bird flying in after them with a bucket in his beak and a brush in his claw. Oh my goodness, what are they going to do? The great glue painting begins. This is the living room, announced Mugglewump, the grand and glorious living room where these 2 fearful, frumptious freaks eat bird pie every week for supper. Please don't mention bird pie again, said the roly-poly bird. It gives me the shudders. We mustn't waste time, cried Mugglewump. Hurry up, hurry up. Now the first thing is this. I want everyone to paint sticky glue all over the ceiling. Cover it all. Smear it in every corner. Over the ceiling, they cried. Why the ceiling? Never mind why, shouted Mugglewump. Just do as you're told and don't argue. But how do we get up there, they asked. We can't reach. Monkeys can reach everywhere, shouted Mugglewump. He was in a frenzy of excitement now, waving his paintbrush and his bucket and leaping about all over the room. Come on, jump on the table, stand on the chairs, hop on each other's shoulders. Roly-poly can do it flying. Don't forget where they're... Don't stand there gaping. We have to hurry. Don't you understand that? Those terrible twits will be back any moment, and this time they'll have guns. Get on with it, for heaven's sake. Get on with it. And so the great glue painting of the ceiling began. All the other birds who had been sitting on the roof flew in to help, carrying paintbrushes in their claws and beaks. There were buzzards. Oh, look at this. Magpies, rooks, ravens, and many more. Look. Wow, sugoi. I wonder if you remember this. We read this before. Everyone was splashing away like mad, and with so many helpers, the job was soon finished. Jurzidatta. Look at this. The carpet goes on the ceiling. What now, they said, looking at Mugglewump. Aha! Cried Mugglewump. Now for the fun. Now for the greatest upside-down trick of all time. Are you ready? We're ready, said the monkeys. We're ready, said the birds. Pull out the carpet, shouted Mugglewump. Pull this huge carpet out from under the furniture and stick it on the ceiling. On the ceiling, cried one of the small monkeys. But that's impossible, Dad. I'll stick you to the ceiling if you don't shut up, snapped Mugglewump. He's dotty, they cried. He's balmy, he's batty, he's nutty, he's screwy, he's wacky, cried the roly-poly bird. Poor old Muggles has gone off his wump at last. Oh, do stop shouting such rubbish and give me a hand, said Mugglewump, catching hold of one of the corners of the carpet. Pull, you nitwits, pull! The carpet was enormous. It covered the entire... Oh, look at this, Hugo. It covered the whole floor from wall to wall. It had a red and gold pattern on it. It is not easy to pull an enormous carpet off the floor when the room is full of tables and chairs. Pull! Yelled Mugglewump. Pull, pull, pull! He was like a demon hopping round the room and telling everyone what to do. But you couldn't blame him. After months and months of standing on his head with his family, he couldn't wait for the time when the terrible Twits would be doing the same thing. At least that's what he hoped. With the monkeys and all the birds all pulling and puffing, the carpet was dragged off the floor and finally hoisted up onto the ceiling. And there it stuck. All at once, the whole ceiling of the living room was carpeted in red and gold. I mean, this is very far-fetched, but... who knows? If you've got a big idea and you keep pushing, you might have a chance. The furniture goes up. Now the table, the big table, shouted Mugglewump. Turn the table upside down and put a dollop of sticky glue on the bottom of each leg. Then we shall stick that on the ceiling as well. Hoisting the huge table upside down on the ceiling was not an easy job, but they managed it in the end. Will it stay there? They cried. Is the glue strong enough to hold it up? It's the strongest glue in the world, Mugglewump replied. It's the special bird-catching, bird-killing glue for smearing on trees. Please, said the roly-bird, I have asked you before not to mention that subject. How would you like it if it was monkey pie that made every Wednesday and all your friends had been boiled up and I went on talking about it? I do beg your pardon, said Mugglewump. I'm so excited I hardly know what I'm saying. Now the chairs, do the same with the chairs. All the chairs must be stuck upside down to the ceiling. And in. Wow, look. And it's sofa, that. And the tables and chairs and everything else too. What's that? Some sort of bottle, and iron maybe? They're right places. Oh, do hurry up, everybody. Any moment now, those filthy freaks are going to come rushing in with their guns. The monkeys, with the birds helping them, put the glue on the bottom of each chair leg and hoisted them up to the ceiling. Now the smaller tables, shouted Mugwump, and the big sofa, and the sideboard, and the lamps, and all the tiny little things, the ashtrays, the ornaments, and the beastly plastic gnome on the sideboard. Everything, absolutely everything, must be stuck to the ceiling. It was terribly hard work. It was especially difficult to stick everything on the ceiling in exactly its right place, but they got it done in the end. What now? Said the roly-poly bird. He was out of breath and so tired he could hardly flap his wings. Now the pictures, cried Mugwump. Turn all the pictures upside down. And will one of you birds please fly out onto the road and watch to see when those frumptious freaks are coming back? I'll go, said the roly-poly bird. I'll stick on the telephone wires and keep guards. It'll give me a rest. And the ravens swoop over. I think that's probably about right to finish today, but that was a good session. Hope you enjoyed that, Chibiske. I think maybe one or two more reads and that will be another book finished. You used to really like that book and it made you laugh when I read it to you in England a long time ago. I like to share these magical stories with you, and really I just hope that for all of this that you learn that reading is a nice thing to do and can open your imagination up to many exciting things and magical things too. Okay, well, whenever you watch this message, I hope you're doing well in life. I'm thinking about you lots always, and I wish you well. Okay, well, I love you lots. Bye bye.